All right, welcome. Today we are diving deep into a really powerful idea from Sun Tzu's Art of War. And it's all about this. How do you find a way to win right in the middle of total chaos? This is a lesson that's just as important for us today as it was on any ancient battlefield.
Now, on the surface, this piece of ancient wisdom sounds pretty simple, right? But what does it actually mean? Like, how do you keep it together when everything around you is just falling apart? How do you hold your ground when the world feels like it's just spinning out of control?
So, to really get this, let's start with a pretty intense example from the author of our source who actually saw combat up close. I want you to imagine this phrase, Wan Pao Qi Hong. It means 10,000 cannons firing all at once. The noise is just deafening. The confusion is total. Soldiers are so scared they can't even tell who's on their side. I mean, that's not just chaos. That is a complete and utter collapse of order.
Okay, so how on earth does a leader or even a team get through that kind of paralyzing chaos? Well, Sun Tzu's principle gives us this really brilliant two-part answer.
So the core idea here is 多乱不乱. And what that really means is that just because everything outside is chaotic, it doesn't mean everything inside has to fall apart too. It's all about creating this little pocket of calm, a bit of clarity right in the eye of the storm.
And it breaks down into two really clear jobs. First, for the army or the team, it's about building this unstoppable momentum, this powerful, forward-moving energy. And second, for the commander, the leader, it's all about staying absolutely calm. I mean, think about it. A leader who panics is going to have a panicked army. But a composed leader, they can hold the whole thing together.
And hey, this isn't just some abstract theory. Let's look at one of the most incredible upsets in all of military history, where this exact idea was put to the ultimate test. Okay, picture this. The year is 383 AD. The former Qin Empire has put together this massive army, we're talking nearly 1 million soldiers, to completely crush the Eastern Jin dynasty, who only have about 80,000 troops. The odds are just insane, more than 10 to 1. So you can imagine the Jin court is absolutely terrified. But the Jin prime minister, a guy named Xie An, was completely calm. I mean, while his generals and his own family were freaking out, what did he do? He just sat down to play a game of Go. He was sending this message of absolute, unshakable confidence. And that calm, that was actually the first move in his whole strategy. You see, Xie An's calm wasn't just him doing nothing. It was the foundation for this brilliant plan. First, by calming his own people down, he set the stage for them to act. They went out and won a key early fight, which started building that unstoppable momentum we talked about. Then, for the main event, they pulled a clever trick. They got the huge, overconfident Qin army to agree to back up just a little bit. But here's the thing. That tiny move in such a massive and frankly disorganized army created this ripple of panic that turned into a complete and total rout. The Qin soldiers fled, so terrified they started thinking the rustling grass and the crying birds were enemy soldiers. And this next part just perfectly shows his mastery of Doluan Bulan. When the messenger arrived with news of this impossible victory, Xie An just glanced at the report, calmly said, "The boys defeated the enemy," and went right back to his game. Amazing, right? But later, when he was alone, he was so filled with joy that he literally broke the wooden shoe he was wearing and didn't even notice. Total calm on the outside, pure fire on the inside. So what's the lesson here? The former Qin didn't lose because they were weak. I mean, come on, they had almost 1 million soldiers. No, they lost because their morale completely shattered and their massive army just dissolved into chaos. The Eastern Jin won because their leader's composure created the internal order they needed to grab that opportunity. So you might be thinking, okay, that's a great story, but does this ancient wisdom really apply today in a world without swords and shields? And the answer is absolutely. The battlefields look different, for sure, but the underlying human psychology, that hasn't changed one bit. So let's fast forward almost 1,700 years to a very different kind of battlefield, a volleyball court at the 2016 Rio Olympics. Okay, so the Chinese women's volleyball team was literally on the brink of being knocked out. They were facing incredible pressure, tons of criticism from the public. Then, in the quarterfinals, the chaos was just off the charts. They were up against a super powerful team, Brazil, in front of their deafening home crowd. But their commander, Coach Lang Qing, was the definition of composure. She kept her team laser-focused, just telling them over and over, play steady. And that calm leadership let her players build their own momentum, that do-or-die spirit.
They ended up pulling off this miraculous win against Brazil and then went all the way to win the gold medal. It was like watching the Battle of Fay River play out all over again. And all of this brings us to what's probably the most important point. This whole idea, it's not just for ancient generals or world-class coaches. It's for every single one of us. You know, our source material reminds us that life is full of these high-pressure moments, right? A huge project at work, a really tough negotiation, maybe a personal crisis. These are our battlefields. These are the moments when chaos feels like it's about to swallow us whole. So the real lesson here, from Sun Tzu, from Xie An at the battle, and from Coach Lang Ping in Rio, it's this. In those moments of pure chaos in your own life, your ability to stay calm and focused, that isn't just a nice-to-have virtue. No, it's your most powerful strategy. So the question for you is, when everything is swirling around you, can you be the calm at the center of your own storm?